Welcome to the SMB Community Podcast with hosts Amy Babinchek, James Kernan, and Carl Polachek. Produced by Kernan Consulting and for the international MSP community. We are dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. The SMB Community Podcast is sponsored by Kernan Consulting and the Millionaire Mastermind Peer Groups. If you're looking for a small, more intimate growth group that will help you with your strategic planning, sales and marketing, and helping hold you accountable in a professional but fun way, then come check out the Millionaire Mastermind Peer Groups, mmpeergroups.com for more information. Thank you. I've got an interesting conversation that I had. So Julian Caldwell, who's a CIO for a TS Banking Group here in the Midwest. I think they've got almost 30 locations, banking locations. And he's a highly technical guy, super smart individual. But we actually talked about earning the right as an MSP business owner or as a salesperson, earn the right to meet the C-suite. When you're cold calling or when you're working with your customers, you know, his opinion was that there's not very many good MSPs out there. And, you know, I just thought that was interesting. And, you know, I started trying to understand, you know, who he worked with and what all they were doing. And his point was really that there was most MSPs are maybe good at one thing, but then they try to go outside their comfort zone, and they might be really good at help desk, but they're really weak on cybersecurity or really weak on compliance or DR or backup. And they spread themselves too thin. And it's their responsibility as busy executives to understand, you know, the skill sets of who they work with. And I agree with that. And anyway, to me, it was kind of a challenging comment for all of you listeners out there to, you know, step up our game, you know, to sell to these bigger entities. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the SMB Community Podcast. This is James Kernan with Kernan Consulting, and I am excited for my co-host today. We've got Julian Caldwell. Julian is actually the CIO of TS Banking Group. They've got 25 locations throughout the Midwest. And throughout his history, he's been more on the other side of the desk, but he's been executives with customers that many of you are calling on. So thought it would be interesting to bring him on the program today and have a conversation about what it looks like on the other side of the desk that we're all calling on and pounding on those doors. So, hey, Julian, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much, James. Thanks for taking the time in a busy afternoon to talk with me.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Well, good to reconnect with you. I really enjoyed our last conversation and was really looking forward to today. So let me just kind of dive into things. You know, really what I'm dying to hear, but don't answer this question first, but I just want to tee up the audience because we're going to talk about, again, what as an executive that works with MSPs and technology VARs all around the country, what does he look at? What does he look for when he's determining who he's going to buy from? Okay, how do you become a strategic partner with Julian as a CIO of a big banking organization? But before we jump into that, that's what we're going to talk about. Tell the audience real quick. Give us a little background. You know, how'd you get into technology? How long have you been doing it? And give us a little background.
So a great question. I got into technology because someone asked me to do something very, very stupid. In 1994, I was a young professional at a large railroad in Omaha, Nebraska, and I got my first promotion. They said, "We'd like you to fill out this spreadsheet every 4 hours and walk it around the dispatching center." And I said, "So wait a second here. I've got a 4-year college degree. I am a very super smart guy," because, you know, I was 25, so I was brilliant at that time.
So you knew everything, yeah.
I was like, this is this is not cool. This is not what I signed up for. And you want me to go fill out the spreadsheet. So I was manually filling out the spreadsheet every 4 hours. and walking around the organization and saying it to the dispatchers. And the leader at the time of the technical group in the dispatching center, I walked in and said, hey, there's got to be a way to automate this, right? This is like, it's data, it's in a mainframe. I had no computer background. No, I took a Lotus 1-2-3 class in college, which is that ages me, because I don't think Lotus 1-2-3 is even around anymore. And he said, son, you're making $50,000 to walk around and fill out a spreadsheet. Smile, go back to your desk and fill out the spreadsheet. I took that as a challenge. I went to Barnes & Noble, which was on 72nd and Dodge here in Omaha, Nebraska. I had no idea what I was looking for, but I'd heard this term called object linking and embedding, OLE, O-L-E, or OLE, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I walk in, dumb, I said, hey, where's your books on computer programming? And they just pointed me up to like this entire row of books, and it said, automate using Microsoft, automate using object linking and embedding. So I bought the books, come home, it was $165, big, thick, fat books. Spent the time reading for the weekend, went back to work. I didn't have a computer at the house, no laptops. I mean, that's like a massive investment. But I would print out the back of the VB code in Excel spreadsheets and take it home, highlight it all night long, go back in the next day, change it on the computer after work was done, and test it. So I did that for about 2 weeks, and I'd automated the process in about, 2 weeks. So I walked back in, I said, I think I've automated this process with a button click. So there was 16, 17 of us in the organization, all doing the same thing, writing, filling out the spreadsheet and walking around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah. So they all of a sudden were automated, and the conversation came, well, you should be in technology. I was like, my only question as a young man, is it weekends off? And do I get done by 5? Those are my only 2 questions. So I literally happenstance found my way into technology, and ended up being that guy in the corner that they kept throwing technology at and said, hey, we don't know what this .NET thing is, but can you take a look at this VB6 thing? Can you look at this? So I kept getting this code thrown at this software programs thrown at me and say, go learn. Yeah. So that's kind of that's the introduction, James, is that how I got into the space. So fast forward a few years, more than 10. I've constantly been in and around the space of automation, process automation, and then really kind of looking at an organization from how do we use technology to both optimize revenue, improve productivity, and also just make us more responsive to our clients. So
yeah, perfect. I love it. Fascinating. Well, thank you for that. So many of our listeners probably have cold called you in the past. So I'm dying to ask the question, what do you look for in MSPs that you have worked with in the past? What would be motivating to you to pick up the phone and call them back? But let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, interesting enough, my perspective about MSPs is it's not negative. It's just that and many of them are missing the boat in terms of strategic conversations. Yep. I literally get 10 to 15 pitches a day via LinkedIn. Yeah. MSP activity anywhere in the world for very, very inexpensive rates. I get phone calls regularly from people from random numbers I don't know, who I randomly answer and determine that I'm going to be pitched a commodity-based decision, which is not how I make decisions and not how I've ever made decisions. So when I think about what an MSP should do, in my opinion, is to be thinking about strategically, what am I doing as a bank? So TS Banking Group is a holding group. So we're both banks. We've got a financial planning group. We've got a tax preparation group. We've got an ag financing, ag like a loan origination company for agriculture. Most of them have never even looked up what we do. They never spent 10 minutes looking at my real bio on LinkedIn, if that's what they're using as a resource, to say, you had a different, interesting background. Who would I know that you know? And they've never spent the time asking about what's going on in the banking space that could be, they can help us with. So the banking is challenging. Every business is challenging. Everywhere we see, people are trying to rethink how they're delivering their products. And very few, if I would almost say none, but very few have ever asked me, what are you doing in the next 3 to 5 years that you don't know how to do yet, or your team doesn't know how to do yet, that I can help you get there? And if they don't ask that question, they typically don't ever get a call back. And they certainly don't get any more time than like a 15-minute, yeah, good, commodity's great, but I don't need level 1 service. I need someone to help me really solve a technical problem that my horsepower or my team can't solve on their own.
Yeah. So you're looking for, strategic, creative people that can help, brainstorm and help solve problems that you're dealing with day in and day out.
No question.
I get that. I get that. Yeah. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So, do you work with multiple tech companies or support companies today?
Yeah, so I have, I'm literally doing budgeting for next year. I've got, 97 vendors that I work with across the technical landscape of a holding group. So although we're 25, a little bit more than that, banks, we've got multiple entities. So I've got multiple tool sets and toolkits I work with. But yes, I actually work with a couple of MSPs. Both of them have been one for a very long time, one new. But it's still the same criticism. I've said that I've been very clear with both of them, is that I arrived on my job a year ago and a week and a year ago, and I got this fancy steak dinner. It was amazing. The guy called me within 1 week, took me out to dinner, and oh, it was great. I mean, it was fantastic. Took my team because I know this is the only time they're going to get a good steak dinner. And I've never talked to him since then.
Wow.
So go figure, he's not on my budget for 2024. Because at the end of the day, if that's the way you see me as a commodity, I will see you as a commodity as well. And that is not really, in my opinion, the way businesses will grow. I don't do business. I wouldn't go to a restaurant again if I was like a once and done sort of thing. So I think that the real opportunity is to be thinking about, what's Julian's company doing? What's his team working on? What problems can I solve that make them move faster? So,
yeah, you're looking for ideas. I love it. That's good. So you said something a moment ago. Let's explore this a little bit. You said that most MSPs are missing the boat.
yes.
They're missing the boat strategically. And
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that? Let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. So, Book of Julian. So Julian's perspective. I think many of the MSPs are pigeonholed into technical providers, level 1, level 2, the LAN administrator, who becomes the chief digital officer or whatever that is, IT manager, maybe create a company called, an MSP and offering those services across multiple players. But they never move out of the hardware conversation into the strategic conversation around where the businesses are going. And I've heard virtual CIO, virtual CTO like 150 times in the last year. We have a virtual CTO. Well, all that means is chief salesperson, right?
Yeah.
The virtual CTO or virtual CIO should not be the person who comes in and sells more services. They should also be responsible for giving you advice that isn't related to more deals in the door. And I think when I think about where I would be going if I was looking at the market, I'd be thinking about, how do I position my company, if I'm a MSP, with a real true person in that space that would be just as apt to say, not a good idea. The James Kernan MSP isn't the right one. They don't have the bandwidth or the capacity or the capability, or we don't have the capacity. But here's 3 of them that you should really evaluate. And here's why I think they're really good. I, as a leader in the technical, I'm looking for objective advice. And if an MSP can provide that objective advice, then you're much more likely to stick with them whenever you need someone than you are if you're getting a pitch.
Yep. That's excellent. So I couldn't agree with you more. And most MSPs, in my opinion, I agree, they're missing the boat. The biggest value proposition in what MSPs offer is that consulting, that strategy.
Yep.
And they all have CIO on their, a la carte menu of what they get. Vendor management, you get, remote help desk, you get antivirus, all these bells and whistles, right? To me, the most valuable by far is our brain power. It's our strategy. And most people don't know. There's not really good training out there for that, but I've always tried to teach people that I work with inside the mastermind community, have a business conversation, not a technology conversation. Need to understand what their 5-year roadmap is. And most businesses have a business plan, but hardly any of them have a technology plan. That's what you're supposed to do. You're going to build that technology plan to help them reach their 5-year goals. That's where we're going to bridge the gap if you can have that conversation. So
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more.
I think a lost leader should be, if I was, again, Julian does not own an MSP, but I've contracted and had multiple experiences with many of them, and I know a lot of the guys and gals in the industry locally.
Yeah.
But I would have a lost leader process that goes in and says, I'm going to assess for you. I'm going to look at this and going to give you this assessment that is, it's part of my gift to you, because I know whenever in the future you're going to have something that's going to come back my way. But I'd come in and I'd say, listen, even if it's a self-assessment for the leader to look at, say, do you understand your data strategy? Do you understand where your data is being stored? Do you have a security, what's your security posture? What kind of tools are you using for that? Asking questions that help a leader who is consuming information at a very, very high rate to be able to boil it down to saying, okay, after I've done the assessment, these 10 things are things that I should be concerned about because I rank lower than I expect them to be, or I rank lower than the rest of my colleagues do. I argue that the leader of an organization is typically the loneliest person at the company. And if you're talking to small business owners in particular, there's no one. I mean, there's mastermind groups, so I'm not saying that those are not valuable, but James, when you look around, when you've got to make a decision, like you look, I'm the last person in the line to make the decision, right? So how do you provide insight for those people so that they go, the decision's actually pretty good. You know, I've got this assessment. It's a working document that delivers me the next 3 years of my kind of where I'm going. And, oh, by the way, James's team came in and did this and they over-delivered. Why wouldn't I think they would over-deliver in first level support and or in cybersecurity or in VPN or whatever the product you want to sell me?
Love it. Yeah, that's good. So something else that you said just is amazing to me. And one, you just said the keyword assessment. Okay. And I think assessment to you means a series of questions.
Yep.
But you must be an expert if you've got 97 vendors that you deal with. I think that's what you just said.
Yep.
And you are required as a leader in your organization to analyze their capabilities and then select the right ones.
Yep.
And obviously you're dealing with a lot more than 97. Those are the 97 that you work with.
Right.
So you've interviewed a lot more. How do you analyze those and of who you end up choosing? I mean, you have a couple questions?
Sure. The first one is like, are you adding to the value or you're accosting me money? Right. So one of the vendors in town and one of the MSPs in town, they came in at a moment where I was struggling because our team was up against some. So we're a 100-year-old bank, 2 data centers in two small towns in Iowa. So we picked the smallest towns with very limited connectivity to build data centers in, which is great, but it's not great if you're trying to maintain and manage that. So one of the vendors came in and said, let's figure out what we're going to do. The entire team showed up on a 7 a.m. call and said, we're going to get the best person on this job for the first week. Just take a look at it. And then they said, we can solve this. Here's our initial assessment of what's going on. Here's a second assessment of what's going on. So are you adding value? So the hourly rate I paid for that consulting was a 15-20x multiplier, because what brought them in is I'm sitting on a Zoom call with a previous MSP, 7 people of my team watching them click through a screen, trying to figure out how to do something in Azure. And I just did the calculation in my head. I go, this is just absolute waste of my energy and time. And I didn't catch it early enough, but that one was a cost. The other one was an investment. So that's the first one. Are you serving the client? Are you serving our organization in a way that moves us forward? And do I consider you an asset or do I consider you a liability? So that's the kind of the first 2 questions. The other
Yep.
part is like, how often do I actually talk to you, and what are those conversations like? So I don't care. I've got more T-shirts that have logos on them than know what to do with. I can go around my office and find mugs of everyone's, golf event and golf tournament and you name it, all that. That doesn't, I mean, I give it away to my kids because they're going to break it. That doesn't mean anything to me. But if you call me up and say, listen, I read a great article on Harvard Business Review about AI and the impacts of having confidential information from a banking organization in the learning the learning models. And I thought you should take a look at this. It's really good. Look at chapter or page 3. I highlighted it, but here's the entire document. That's a conversation that I'll have because that person isn't worried about the sell today. They're worried about 2 years from now, whenever I've got an AI conversation going on, they'll say, hey, James, that's great information. And that's the way to do it. And it's actually just the way to be an actual good human being who's partnering in someone's success. It's not about sales, it's about partnering in someone's success.
Yep. Wow. Audience, did you hear that? That's amazing feedback. That's some golden nuggets right there. And just a friendly reminder, always be prepared for the call, always be ready to explain your value proposition and do some research and come up with some ideas. What Julian's saying, I've heard this before. It's so important, come into those meetings and those pitches prepared. And it's more about a long-term relationship with another human being, not a quick sale today. So I love that. I love that feedback. So that's amazing. So what else are you working on now? You're kind of getting ready for fiscal year 24.
Yeah. So I think this has been a great year for me here. I've loved this. Has been great. It's interesting, these not technical turnarounds, because this is we're moving to the cloud. We're in process. We're already there. So the 24 and 25 year for us is really this kind of cloud collaboration adventures. Like this is the year of not cleaning the house, but getting things in order. So we can move forward. So we've rolled out Office M365, which may say, well, why wouldn't you have done that earlier? Well, it's not easy when we had 2 Exchange servers on-prem, one that didn't get completely retired. So we had a long history to get that off of the plate. But we're using tools now on, at a bank, we're actually mobile. Amazing, right? It sounds illogical that you wouldn't already be mobile, but our team can much more effectively handle our clients' requirements based upon the new technology that we rolled out only in the last 2.5 months. But 2024 is really about our new core, the new banking core, all cloud first core, and then moving into the next generation of what does a bank look like, right? We are competing against Amazon Pay, Google Pay, anything pay that has more, it's a hub, right? We are not a hub. I can't be Elon Musk and say, I'm going to open up checking accounts and pull in all these deposits like that, because I don't have that market share. So how do we use data, technology, and our 100 years of experience to win more market share in the communities that we're in? So as you probably know, there's no more green space in the banking space. It's all red. You're taking business from other banks. So that's the game that we've got to be better at. And because of our investment in the cloud and our in infrastructure, and the fact that we've continued to grow by expanding, I feel comfortable the next few years is going to be great. But it's a challenge. It's technical. I'm with the rest of the leadership team. We're really leading the way of trying to get ourselves positioned better to serve our communities and enrich those communities in a much better way.
Yep, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So there you have it. That's some of the trends of what they're looking to do, and I think it's very similar across the board with many of your customers today and other people that you may not be working with of what they're moving into for fiscal year 2024. So yes. That's awesome. Well, hey, thanks for being on the program, Julian. Looking forward to bumping into you again. I'll see if I can twist your arm at one of the local Midwest mastermind events to come in and speak to the group when we're close to home for you. But really appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much, James. Appreciate all that you're doing.